Welcome back to another Indy Investor Pod. It's a podcast that we just kind of get together, talk about how to invest in Indy, some of the tips, some of the strategies, some of the best things that are going on in the city. So we just kind of break it down. We pick a different topic each time and just kind of give it to you as best we can. You got Brett and Brian with you today, and we're just going to kind of take a look at maybe the top 10 mistakes that we see investors make here in Indianapolis. We're just going to talk about those a little bit. Hopefully some of our insights can help you out. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time with any questions that you have. And with that, let's get on with the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Indy Investor Pod. We are talking about the top 10 mistakes that we see Indy investors making. So we got Brett and Brian here with you today, and we're just going to kind of break it down for you. So how are we doing today, Brett?
I'm doing fantastic, Brian. Thanks for being on the show with me, man. Looking forward to this. Talking about mistakes.
So yeah, I mean, it's not something we want to like shed light on and be like, hey, this is, we're going to talk about all the bad things and stuff like that. No, this is definitely not it at all. This is actually one that I think we put out different topics. It's like, hey, what do you want us to talk about? What do you want to hear about? Things like that. Like, people want to hear about the mistakes. And I know we've even on our wholesaling platform, we've been talking about, we have Mistake Monday, and we talk about some of the mistakes that we've made, some of the mistakes that, other investors we see making, things to be careful of, those types of things. And that's been one of the vlogs that get the most traction because it touches home with people. And I think that's nothing different with this. We're not trying to call people out or saying, you can do some of these things and some of them are okay and you can come out okay on the other side. These are just things that we see from our side, from talking to other investors here in Indy, talking to other wholesalers as well. Just that we see some people making. So it's just something that people ask for. We thought it'd be a good topic. And then plus people love top 10 lists. So always fun to do some stuff like that. So
yeah.
Before we dive into this,
I also want
to,
I just want to add to that. So I'm really excited about just talking about mistakes because I think you don't learn from when you don't make mistakes. You only learn from your mistakes. And, come from the sports world, play basketball, is whenever we watch game films, you would hate to see yourself make a mistake. You would do a turnover or miss a shot or miss a free throw, whatever it is, because I was Indiana basketball. But you learn from those, right? And I think that these are really important because we can learn from all of these. So this is a learning show. So I guess I just kind of look at it like that. Like, if you can learn from my mistakes, great. And if I can learn from other people's mistakes, that's even better than me making my own. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And it's times like this when we're going through something like the pandemic and COVID-19 and the shutdown and stay at home orders, all this stuff. It's really easy to see where some of your mistakes that you've been making in the past when the market was super hot and you could buy anything and still flip it or do anything like that. Like, some of the mistakes are kind of out there where you're like, they're prevalent a little bit more in businesses and things. So, so we can go ahead and get into it right now. And these are in no particular order. We just kind of made a list of 10. We talked about it back and forth, did some editing and pre-writing and all that stuff, but this is what we came up with. So like I said, no particular order, but we'll go ahead and jump into it. I think one of the big mistakes I see investors making is just analysis paralysis. No matter what you're doing, whether you're a wholesaler, a buy and hold guy, a fix and flipper, you're looking for that right bird deal and stuff like that, it is very easy to just get kind of bogged down by the numbers and kind of miss out on deals because you're so ingrained in, oh, does it actually hit this? Does it do this? Does it do this? Now, I will say there is a little caveat to this too, because I'm, as a numbers person, as a former math teacher, like, I can completely appreciate you being into the numbers and knowing what your numbers are. And I would say, hey, stay in your wheelhouse and don't stick outside those numbers. But sometimes too, I see investors passing on some really good deals just because they're like, oh no, it doesn't hit this criteria and things like that. Well, it might not hit it now, but looking at projecting or what we see other investors doing, it might not look, it might be in this kind of close to that red area on your map when it comes to talking to crime, but I know 5 to 10 other investors that are just crushing it there right now. So I think it comes down to maybe having the right boots on the ground and stuff too, and talking about that, but just kind of getting tied down to analysis paralysis, where you're just looking at the numbers but not looking necessarily at the deal itself, is something that I see investors tend to make and stuff. And I think it kind of holds some investors back as well. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Number 2, I see this all the time when people over leverage themselves. And that is such an easy thing to do in real estate. And a lot of real estate investors, they're always trying to push the envelope a little bit more on if they can get an 80% LTV loan to value. Can they get a little bit higher? Can they get a 90? Can they get 100% with like no money, right? That's the big infomercials back in the day, is no money down, no money out of pocket, do something with absolutely no money, use everybody else's money. And I think that that's like, a cool thing to kind of think about. But if you have your own money in it and you have more skin in the game, you're going to take it and be, just more responsible with it. And it can come back to bite you if you over leverage yourself, especially during a time like this, during the pandemic. And I'm seeing a lot of investors that have really pushed that envelope, over leveraging themselves, where like, if they don't get rent this month from their tenant, they're in trouble. And that's a tough place to be, right? So make sure you have reserves back. Cash is king right now, and have cash back for that rainy day when the storms come. And don't over leverage yourself. For me, example, I don't care if I get 100%, right? I'm more of like a 70% loan to value guy, because I don't want to be over leveraged at the end of the day, and I want to make sure I have a good position in my properties. So don't over leverage.
Yeah. So number three, next one on our list. I see a lot of people, especially when they're first starting and they're revved up, they're ready to go and stuff like that. Sometimes they scale too fast and they just kind of bite off a little bit more than they can chew. All of a sudden they might have a few more properties. They can't keep track of their contractors. They're struggling with their property manager a little bit or something like that. And also I see this kind of happen where people, they jump into it. They're running really quick and they, all of a sudden they have like 7 rental properties and they're like, oh, I don't really like single families. I feel like I'd be more of a multifamily guy, or kind of get duplexes and stuff like that. So sometimes I think it's just, make sure you slow down, you think about it, you understand what you want to do, and you know what you want to do as you're scaling, as you're jumping in, things like that. And, start off a little bit small, get a couple properties or something like that, and then decide, make sure that's the right thing for you. Make sure you have the right team, and then scale from there if that's exactly what you do and stuff. So I just see some people just like jump in, all of a sudden they have, a handful of rental properties and they're like, oh no, I need to sell these because I want something bigger. I want a different area. I want something like that. So sometimes just jumping in and going too fast, which I can completely respect the fact of like, hey, I'm all into it. I'm going for this and stuff. That's fine. Just make sure we kind of like to, I know in our mastermind, we like to use the phrase scaling responsibly. So let's kind of make sure you want to do that, and make sure it's definitely what you want to be doing and you're on the right track and you're kind of setting those milestones of what you want to get to versus just kind of jumping in and running with it.
Awesome. Number 4, I see people, they don't build their team first. They kind of build their team when they need someone, right? They build their team along the way. An example would be you buy a house and, and now you need to rehab it. So you post on social media and and you didn't really kind of think about that first. So if I were going into a different market, I would try to build my team first, right? And you got to think about, okay, who do I need on my team? I always go back to the sports world. In the basketball world, you need a center, you need a couple of guards, you need a couple of forwards, a coach. Those are some of the components that you need to the team. And in the investment world, you need a good investor-friendly title company. If you're rehabbing houses or doing rentals, you need a handyman or a contractor. You need a good insurance company, getting property insurance. If you're borrowing money, you need some sort of private money lender or a traditional lender. And you need some boots on the grounds, and you need someone helping you along the way, kind of, especially if you're living out of state too, someone to help you do your due diligence and things like that. So, and we have more components to that on our team. So just make sure if you're a new investor to look and think about the components of your team and build your team first before when you really need them.
Okay. So yeah, next one, number 5, something I kind of see, this is more for maybe new investors and stuff like that. And this is kind of a good follow-up to making sure you have your team and having your boots on the ground and stuff like that. But this one's kind of one that like, I see a lot of, especially when they're starting off and they have that first project or they have that first house that they're going after and stuff like that, whether it's a rental or a flip property. But when investors only maybe get one bid from one contractor on their, on their first property or whatever like that, like that's good. But I think as you're building a team, I think you need to try to get a couple different, contractors to go out there and get bids from. Make sure you understand that you might like somebody and you might be like, hey, I'm going to work with this person because we get along great. We have the same core values. All my buddies use them. That's fine. But when you're looking at the first kind of first project or first few projects and stuff like that, I would send a couple contractors out there just so you understand kind of what's going on in the market. You understand how people are bidding different things. You understand how your contractor is bidding it compared to other people and stuff like that. So I just see, we'll get some investors that they'll sit down and they'll talk to us and be like, hey, this is exactly what I want to do. This is where I want to be. This is the price point I want to be, everything like that. And then you can give them like that particular exact property of exactly what they're asking for and stuff like that. And then they find some contractor they meet on bigger pockets and stuff like that. The contractor goes out there and gives them like a super high bid and stuff like that. And they're like, oh no, this is terrible property. I don't want it. Things like that. Like, okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but did you ask another contractor? Did you get another bid out there just to make sure that I don't know why my numbers are wrong, those kind of things. So I think it's just one thing that I think, especially if you're setting out or you're starting out and you're building that team, you're looking for that contractor, you're looking for that right property and stuff like that. Send a couple people out there to take a look at it. Get a couple bids on it to make sure kind of where your numbers are, you're understanding where they're coming from. Because honestly, depending on what neighborhood you're in, depending on, of course, wherever you are in the U.S. and stuff like that, all contractors' bids can be a little different. All numbers can be a little different. So I think it's something that, like I said, as you're starting off, make sure you get a couple different bids so you know where the numbers are in this particular place, this particular neighborhood where you want to invest.
Awesome. Number 6, don't study the city and the neighborhoods. That's a mistake. If you do not study your city and the neighborhoods, and this is a mistake I think that I made a lot earlier in my career. I didn't really study the neighborhoods, didn't really know the different zip codes and what the houses were going for in certain neighborhoods. I checked comps and I knew kind of where I was at, but I really just didn't study it. I didn't study the current events. I didn't have a subscription to the newspaper, the Indianapolis Star for Indianapolis, and I didn't know exactly what was going on. I didn't know what business in. And I think it's just really important to know your market, know your city, and to study. And there's some parts of Indianapolis that I really enjoy that you might enjoy or that you might not enjoy, and vice versa. You might say, hey, I really like this area because I've experienced here and I love investing here. And I might say, you know what, I don't like that area because the cap rate's not high enough for me, and I want to take a little bit more risk in some of the city types of areas around Indianapolis. So I think, one thing is just to study them and figure out what works for you. There's so many cities or so many neighborhoods in Indianapolis that work for different investors, right? I think you can really win at all the neighborhoods if you really want to. So I think it's just important to study it, get the city map. We did an episode earlier on the Indianapolis city map. We're actually coming up with some future episodes about certain neighborhoods. That's some great episodes coming up to watch that really can help you guys study the neighborhoods of Indianapolis.
Yeah, I would say just add on that just one thing real quick too. I say, make sure that every neighborhood, like there's a different strategy you can use for every neighborhood. So you might hear some person saying like, oh man, I would never invest in this neighborhood and stuff like that. Okay, well, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? What do you want to do? Maybe your strategy will work in their neighborhood, or maybe a strategy that, that you're trying to do won't work in a neighborhood that's really working for them and stuff too. So I think just when it comes to studying that, just making sure you're following up and making sure that it fits with your strategy and what you want to be doing as well. So number 7, just the next thing too, kind of revolves going back to that kind of building your own team and having those same people and stuff like that. So one mistake I kind of see happen too, especially when you're kind of below that 10 property mark. Maybe this falls into a little bit more just because you're still kind of making sure you're on the same page with your team, your contractor, your PMs, stuff like that. But when you're just relying on those contractors, your property managers, your wholesaler, whoever it is, when you're just taking their advice on the deals, I think that can definitely be a good thing. It can definitely make that work and stuff like that. But I would really recommend too, just having some kind of a third party, someone that's impartial to you, impartial to your PM, impartial to your wholesale, whoever it is. Check out that property as well. It might cost you, maybe an extra $100, extra $200, whatever that may be. Maybe it's an inspector, maybe it's something like that. But having a third party go out there and inspect those properties as well, I think that's really important. I see some people, when they're like, hey, oh, my PM doesn't like that area and things like that. Well, that's okay. That's fine. But this is exactly what you're trying to do. Maybe you need to expand your PM or something like that. So I think when sometimes it just comes down to just going to have that contractor, that PM, that wholesaler. What they want to do is maybe they're trying to make sure you get another property because they want to put another property on their belt. I'm not saying everybody's they're out for themselves or anything like that. It's just the nature of the beast because they have some skin in the game on the backside too. So make sure you have some kind of I would just recommend having some kind of a third party. There's people around town here that you can go out and check out a property and see if it fits your strategy, see if it works for you and stuff. So I always like to, especially like I said, when you're looking at that, maybe the first 10 properties before you know how your contractors work and before you know how your PMs work and your wholesaler, whoever it is, have some kind of a third party go out there and look at those properties. If you are an out-of-state person, or even if you're an in-state person, that's not your thing. You're not used to going out looking at properties and stuff. Have the people have the experience to go out there and look at them for you.
Great. Number 8, burn bridges. And this is a huge mistake that I see in the investor community is that people burn bridges. They say something that, an example would be like, I'm never going to work with you again, ever. Right. And I've been in this business long enough, I've been in it for 13 years, that things change, right? People change. Someone just getting started might have done something at one point, but then 5 years later, they really got their act together and they're actually doing things right. And if you say that, you're never going to work with that person again, but now they're actually an ally to you and they're doing some of the right things, then you're right, you can work with them again. So I would just watch what you say about burning bridges. This is real estate, folks. There's things that pop up all of the time. I just got an email yesterday about an issue that we had with one of our properties that we had sold. And that's a perfect opportunity that we have to make a decision. And the decision is, and it hasn't been totally resolved yet, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this, but we have to make a decision is, do we stand up for what's right and try to help? Or do we just say, hey, tough luck, whatever, and move on our way and burn that bridge? We always have to make that choice. You're going to have to make that choice hundreds of times in the investment community. And I would just be careful and think about those decisions when those problems and issues arise about who you're affecting and the bridges that you're burning.
So awesome. Number 9, on our list, I think I'm going to kind of just have this all in one big category here, just the BRRRR strategy. So I know it's like the hot thing, everybody's trying to do it and everything like that. I know talking to a lot of investors, especially when they sign up for our buyers list or they start looking at properties, they're like, oh, I want a BRRRR. And then my question is always like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Because that means a lot of different things to some different people and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I just know I want a BRRRR. Well, okay, make sure you understand what that means, where you want to do it, how you want to do it, what your strategy is going to be, how much are you, what's your time frame, how long do you want to, do you want to wait till you reinvest or refinance, that kind of thing and stuff like that. So I'd say be careful with that and make sure you understand your strategy. And really that's what maybe this comes back to, not necessarily over the BRRRR, but just making sure you understand your strategy, your ins and outs of it and how well it can work for you. But when we are talking about the BRRRR strategy, I see a lot of people, like everybody's trying to do the same thing. You have so many investors going after the same property. It's really tough. And you got people that are just trying to refinance, too quickly, and they need to have that turnaround just a little too quickly. But if they wait a little bit longer, maybe the neighborhood's going to be, the appreciation is going to be a little bit better, or you're going to be able to get a little bit more out of it. Same thing too, or maybe people are just trying to always pull out, kind of goes back to Brett's, over leveraging thing where they're just trying to pull out 100% of it right away. Can you pull out just 80%? Can you survive with that? Can you make that work for you? So understanding how you want to do it, making sure you understand your strategy, making sure it works for you and not, your buddies or anything like that. So I think it's something that I see a lot of people kind of fumbling around with and struggling with, especially when you get into something like this right now. When you are having, when you have a strategy that you need to, basically pull money out, you need to refinance, things like that. So it's tough. So make sure you're not over leveraging, kind of come back to what Brett said before. But then also you understand how the strategy works, what you're doing, and how it works for you.
Sounds good. And the last one, I actually just did a video yesterday on Mistakes Monday about, I think that people make the mistake, they don't build enough relationships. And when I think about our business, I don't think that we're by any means better than anyone else in any of this business. Actually, I think the opposite, honestly. I think a lot of people do a lot of things better than what we do. But I think the one thing that we try to do well And the one thing that I've always came back to is that this is a people business. It's a relationship business, just like any business, right? And that you have to have relationships to move the needle forward. And I think the reason why we have been successful is possibly because we just have more relationships than the new investor, right? Most of our deals come from relationships. Most of the deals that we sell properties to come from relationships, right? And so I think that every day you have to constantly think about who should I be building more of a relationship with? Because when you have relationships, things are so much easier, right? Uh, Relationships with lenders, getting money is easier, right? Having relationships with cash buyers, selling properties is easier. Having relationships with wholesalers, getting properties is easier, right? So make sure you're constantly building those relationships. I think it's just going to pay dividends in the end.
Awesome. Yeah. And just that, I think an overwhelming theme kind of through with a lot of the stuff is communication. Just making sure that you're communicating with your team, with your people, with whoever you're working with, just make sure you're, staying in touch with them, staying on track with them, and then always updating them, always, updating, you want their updating criteria, what they're buying, what they're selling, all that stuff. And then you also want to know what they're doing as well. So communication is kind of an overwhelming theme here. So we would love to know what you guys think about the list. Feel free if you feel like we missed anything, like, oh man, I see people making this mistake too. We would like to add it on the list. Maybe we come up with, I guarantee we come up with another 10 and do another episode a couple months down the road and stuff like that. But we would love to hear kind of what you think, any comments, any concerns, any other issues, any other things that we need to, like I said, like maybe we missed on the list that we need to add on here and stuff like that. So Brett, before we get out of here today, do you have anything else to add or anything else to just wrap this up with?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think just kind of going back to the beginning, guys. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes today and can constantly make mistakes, and we can learn from those mistakes. So hopefully, you don't have to pick out all 10. Just pick out one, right? Say, hey, I need to really work on this one right now. If you try to take all 10, and it's like eating this whole big plate of all this food, right? And you just get stuffed and you get overwhelmed. And so one thing that I've learned is I go to a lot of mastermind groups and listen to a lot of different seminars and videos just like this. Is I can't take it all, but can I just take one and just take that home with me and really use it to learn?
So awesome stuff. So just a quick little recap here before we jump off. So we have the top 10 mistakes that we see Indy investors making. We have analysis paralysis, over leveraging themselves, trying to scale too fast, not building a team first, only getting one bid from one contractor on their first few properties, not studying the city and neighborhoods, relying on contractors and PMs to check their properties and not a third party, burning bridges, the BRRRR strategy, seeing just a lot of mistakes done with that, and then not building enough relationships. So quick little recap for you. Thanks a lot for joining us today, for reaching out. Let us know if you have any other topics that, whether it's a mistake that you think we could talk about, or just another, hey, Brian, Brett, you guys need to do a topic on this. You guys need to do an episode on this. You guys need to do a series on this stuff right here. We want to know about it. We want to hear about it. We want to make sure this show is what you need. So thanks a lot from the Indy Investor Pod.
See you guys.